Well, this was a process of negotiation, and the Senate had some very strong ideas about how they wanted to see the ballot question adhered to. We were negotiating three bills. We were negotiating the Senate bill, a House bill, and a ballot question. So this made this very, very difficult. And we did come to an agreement that if you do want to ban anything, you're going to have a town hall referendum.
For all communities?
If you want to ban something. The yes communities. The no communities have already banned are all set. We don't have to do anything.
Well, they have to take a vote of their legislative body.
So if you voted against the ballot law, then it's the local body that gets to decide if marijuana is banned. But if your community voted in favor of the ballot law, then you need a referendum.
It's a true compromise between the House and the Senate.
And it's a preservation of voter voice, so that in a large election, in those minority of communities that voted against the ballot question, that voter voice prevails and they're able to have their local communities decide. But if the people in the community voted for the referendum, then the referendum stands as how the...
Chairman Brownsberger asked, this was an amendment that David Rogers put forward in the House that sort of split between yes communities and no communities. I asked Marty Healy, the Chief Legal Counsel of the Bar Association. He has some real concerns about whether this is constitutional. Can you speak to why you believe this is constitutional under Massachusetts statute?
We did consult Senate counsel as to the constitutionality of that, and we got advice that it was constitutional.
Can you sort of explain the idea of...
I don't understand why it would be unconstitutional.
Equal protection issues,
No, it's not
using the initiative to a statewide initiative and then chunking it up town by town to make...
No, I mean, it has a basis. It's not an equal protection issue because it has a basis in fact and record, so it's not like we're discriminating against the community. We're in fact implementing what the communities want.
You told me before walking in that 12% maximum tax on pot was your ideal number. Coming back with this compromise, that number is higher. What do you think about that?
You know what? I actually am fine with it. I think that at the end of the day, the most important thing for us is to roll this market out. And that means getting establishments licensed in communities across the state. And so a little bit higher tax rate is going to help do that. So as a proponent of the ballot question and as somebody who believes that a legal market is necessary, I feel pretty good about this bill.
And talk to me a little bit, Chairman Cusack, about you had used some of the casino language from the gaming law in the House-passed version. How much of that remains, and why did you come to the compromises you came to?
As the leader and the chair said, this is a true compromise, and in that fashion, we chose not to be as prescriptive in our bill. We originally did that in the thought that in order to get the CCC up and running, we had to give them a minimum standard. So we walked some of that back a little bit and compromised to give the CCC some more wiggle room where their area of expertise as defined in this bill that they're going to bring to this commission to allow them to establish the regulations that they see fit to regulate this new industry.
And is it 5 people?
It is 5 people.
And by whom were they appointed?
One by the governor, one by the attorney general, one by the treasurer, and the majority of those 3 will select the next 2.
And is it under the treasurer's office, or does it exist sort of?
It is under the treasurer's office, but setting it up as a state agency with a budget will go through the normal process for a state agency through the legislature.
Who appoints the chair?
The chair is appointed by the treasurer, and the executive director is appointed by all 5.
And the House had a pretty large outlay for substance abuse funding in your bill. What's that at now in this compromise bill?
We felt very strongly that we didn't want to get into being prescriptive on the numbers. We identified some places where we want to see the money go, but we're reluctant to put hard numbers and percentages to this. Because of the structuring of a whole new industry, we wanted to be sure we had accurate numbers before we started messing around with it.
What did you ultimately decide on expungement?
There's no expungement, but it clarifies that you can have your record sealed if you were convicted of a crime that is no longer a crime. And we create a public awareness campaign so that people will know about that. So it's part of our social justice campaign.
Are you satisfied with that?
For now.
There was a lot of concern from members of the Black and Latino caucus that some versions of various bills didn't do enough to address communities that were disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. Chairwoman Jalen, what parts of this compromise legislation do you think address those concerns?
Well, one is preserving the right of people who have been involved in illicit marijuana to get opportunities in employment. And another is that one of the things we would spend money on, in addition to prevention and treatment, would be job opportunities and business development opportunities in communities that have been impacted by the war on
And
drugs.
there's a couple of more provisions that are worth mentioning. In the licensing, initial licensing, the commission's supposed to favor license applicants that are oriented toward inclusion and developing businesses and communities that are affected. And there are a total, I believe, of 5 members of the Cannabis Advisory Commission who are experts in minority business development, social justice, et cetera. So there's a lot of different provisions that focus on inclusion and development, bringing people back in.
In the House version of the bill, there was language that repealed both voter referendums. Where does it stand now?
Well, I'll speak to that. The main structure does not repeal the 2016 ballot question, and so this is an amendment as opposed to repeal and replace. As to the medical, we pretty much copy that into statute. That's in an odd place as a session law, and it belongs in statute, so we do that, substantially preserving the language, and with specific language assuring that the regulations will not be more restrictive than what was provided under the original language.
So medical will remain under DPH? Or?
No, medical gets merged into Cannabis Control Commission.
Is there this advisory commission that the ballot law contemplated didn't have any statutory power besides issuing recommendations? Did you give them any more power than that, or is it just the recommendation?
No, just recommendations.
I got here a little late. Can someone explain the tax situation, which I'm sure was your first? Where did you come in on the tax? What was the other one?
6.25 for sales tax. 7.
What's the maximum?
You get a calculus? A calculator?
20%, right? 20%?
With the local option, yeah.
It's exactly the same as Oregon, which is perceived as one of the most successful states in rolling out this new market.
There were several protections within the ballot law that said that DCF couldn't use the use of marijuana to, particularly go after people that did those all remain in there? Some of the DCF.
Yeah, we copied a lot of the alcohol issues and came down on the side of making sure that this was not abused by law enforcement to single out people who are using marijuana. So we're very mindful of that.
And have you talked to the Yes on 4 campaign, in this process? Have you talked to
Have
them
I
about
talked
it?
to the yes? No.
Chairman Cusack, what provisions in this compromise legislation do you feel will best enhance protection of health and safety of the people of the Commonwealth that didn't exist beforehand?
Certainly, one of the biggest areas is the independent lab testing to ensure that this is as safe as possible and that the consumers know that this is safe and not laced with anything, and move them from the black market into this legal marketplace. That's a key factor for safety and consumer confidence in what they're purchasing.
I would add to that, I think that may be the most important one, but in addition, the language that we adopt in the compromise bill combines the best elements of the House and Senate bills as to product labeling, product packaging, and advertising. And so we have some very strong language on those issues, which I think will create a strong regulatory scheme to protect public health.
Representative Kane, this was something you talked a lot about on the campaign trail against the ballot question. You signed the jacket?
I did.
How do you feel about that? You made a lot of very potent arguments that this was going to be really bad for the kids of the Commonwealth to legalize. How do you feel about it now?
As I'm sure you know, on the campaign trail, what I said consistently was I was not philosophically opposed to legalization, that I was concerned about the implementation of it in terms of how the ballot initiative was structured. So I feel very good about where we are today. I think that we dealt with a lot of the issues in terms of the regulatory structure, in terms of the public health and the public safety, and I would echo what Senator Brownsberger just said. I mean, we have done, I think, a substantial amount to make sure that we are protecting our youth, those under 21, from being exposed to marijuana. So I feel very good about where we are today, and I was very pleased to sign the jacket.
And in terms of the balance between mandating what the CCC has to do or giving them the opportunity to do, sort of how did you address how you came down on that balance?
There was the negotiations of philosophies, and we listed we have a whole section of powers which we think are important in the establishment of this new regulated industry, and we did allow some freedom for the CCC to develop their own, but we were pretty prescriptive in what we want to see them do coming out of the box.
And are they paid, all of the members?
Yeah, everyone's paid. Yeah.
At a rate of...
The chair will be paid commensurate with the secretary and ANF, and the 4 other commissioners will be at 2/3 of the salary. 3/4, I apologize.
And do you believe that'll be able to, that's enough salary to draw people who are going to be...
Yes, and we need them to be full-time and, dedicate their full effort to getting this marketplace implemented, regulated, and off the ground, and in the safest way and for the people of the Commonwealth.
When do we expect a final vote on this by the House and Senate? Do you know?
We're looking to do it on Wednesday.
And
Yeah.
we'll probably do it Thursday.
The deadline's still the same as far as appointment, September 1st, the CCC should be in effect?
Yes, it is.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Senator Ross?
You didn't get away. You didn't get away.
Did everyone sign the jacket?
We all signed the jacket.
You were...
We all signed a jacket. There were many of us that were not happy with the way the ballot question went, but once it was here, we certainly wanted to be a part of improving what the voters had said they wanted. And I think my place at the table was exactly that. Someone who was against it, who learned out in Colorado all the evils that could happen perceived by the industry. But we also knew that with what we were given here, that each of us had a chance to make it better. And as the minority party member in the Senate that was with this group, I felt like I was given a good voice. I figured that they had listened to me really well, and I was proud to sign the jacket.